Hey everyone, let's talk about thrifting. It's become super popular, right? We all love a good bargain. Finding unique pieces at thrift stores is a thrill. But lately, you might have noticed something. Thrifting isn't as cheap as it used to be. Why is that?
Well, one big reason is simply supply and demand. More people are into thrifting now, which is awesome. But with more shoppers looking for treasures, the demand for those items goes up. When demand is high, prices naturally tend to rise. It's like that cool vintage band tee everyone wants. It's going to be priced higher than a plain old shirt.
Social media plays a big role too. Remember when we all went crazy for those 90s slip dresses? Platforms like TikTok and Instagram have made certain styles and trends super popular. Everyone wants to recreate those looks. So naturally, when those items pop up in thrift stores, they get snatched up quickly, often at higher prices.
It's a bit of a bummer that prices are going up, but the good news is that thrifting is still a more sustainable and often cheaper way to shop. Plus, it's just plain fun. But to understand why those prices are climbing, we need to look at a few other factors. Okay, so remember how we talked about social media's impact on thrifting? Well, it goes beyond just trends. The rise of reselling platforms like Poshmark, Depop, and The RealReal has been a game changer. These platforms have made it easier than ever for people to buy and sell secondhand clothing and accessories.
Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Reselling can be a great way to give clothes a second life and promote sustainability. Plus, it can be a fun side hustle, but it has definitely impacted prices at thrift stores. Savvy resellers often scour thrift stores for those hidden gems, designer bags, vintage Levi's, you name it, and then resell them online for a profit.
This creates more competition for those items. Thrift stores, seeing the potential for higher profits, start pricing these in-demand items accordingly. They know that resellers are willing to pay a premium for pieces they can flip for even more. So, that cute vintage blouse you had your eye on might have a higher price tag because the store knows it could be resold online for a significant markup.
It's a whole new world of thrifting out there, folks. But don't worry, we'll unpack all of this more in the next sections. We'll talk about how things like inflation and supply chain issues are also playing a role in those rising thrift store prices.
All right, let's talk about something that's affecting pretty much everything these days: the economy. Just like groceries and gas, the cost of, well, everything has been going up, and thrift stores aren't immune to that. Inflation is a big factor here. When the cost of goods and services rises, it creates a ripple effect throughout the entire economy.
For thrift stores, this means they have to pay more for things like rent, utilities, and even transportation costs to get those donated items to the store. And guess what? Those increased operating costs get passed along to us, the shoppers.
Then there are those pesky supply chain issues we've all been hearing about. Remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020? Well, those kinds of disruptions can affect all sorts of industries, including thrift stores. When there are delays or shortages in the supply chain, it can drive up the cost of goods, and again, those costs trickle down to the consumer.
So next time you're at the thrift store and wondering why that adorable vintage sweater seems a bit pricey, remember that the economy plays a big role. These external factors are putting pressure on thrift stores to adjust their pricing, just like any other business.
But don't despair. We'll talk about some other reasons behind those rising prices. Okay, so we've talked about how popularity, reselling, and the economy all factor into rising thrift store prices. Now let's zoom in on the actual cost of running a thrift store. It's not just about putting out donated clothes and hoping for the best.
Thrift stores have expenses just like any other business. They need to pay rent, keep the lights on, and cover water bills. Those costs have been going up. Then there's the cost of labor. Employees sort donations, price items, stock shelves, and work the register.
Wages have been rising, which means higher operating costs. And let's not forget about transportation. Thrift stores need trucks and drivers to pick up donations. With gas prices being what they are, transportation costs add up.
All these expenses get factored into the price tags you see. Thrift stores need to cover their costs and make a little profit to keep serving their communities.
So, next time you're browsing, remember those price increases reflect the real challenges they face. Hold on to your hats, everyone, because we're about to talk about something called thrift store gentrification. Sounds fancy, right? Well, it's a real thing, and it's playing a part in why those thrift store prices are creeping up.
Here's the deal. As thrifting has become more mainstream and trendy, it's attracted a wider range of shoppers, including those with higher budgets. We're talking about folks who might not have considered thrifting before, but are now drawn to its sustainability and unique finds.
Thrift stores have noticed this shift, and some have responded by upping their game. We're seeing more curated selections, trendy displays, and even online shops popping up. Think of it like this. Some thrift stores are becoming more like boutiques, aiming for a more upscale vibe to attract those higher-spending customers.
Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be great to see thrift stores evolving and appealing to a broader audience, but it can also mean that those bargain basement prices of the past are becoming harder to find.
As thrift stores adapt to attract a more affluent clientele, it's natural for their pricing to reflect that shift. So, while thrifting is still a more affordable option compared to buying brand new, it's not quite the hidden treasure trove of dirt cheap deals it once was. But hey, that's okay. We'll talk more about how thrift stores are strategizing their pricing in the next section. Okay, let's talk about how thrift stores decide how much to charge for those pre-loved treasures. Because, let's be real, it's not like they have a magic price gun that tells them exactly what each item is worth. Pricing in thrift stores is a bit of an art form, and it's becoming more strategic as they navigate this changing landscape. Thrift stores are getting savvier about identifying those in-demand items that will fetch a higher price. Remember those vintage Levi's and designer bags we talked about earlier? Yeah, those are definitely not going to be priced at the same level as a basic t-shirt. They're also paying attention to brands and labels. Items from popular or high-end brands are more likely to get snapped up quickly, so they'll often command a higher price tag. It's all about understanding what their customers are looking for and pricing accordingly. And here's an interesting twist. Some thrift stores are using data and technology to help them price items more effectively. They might track which items sell quickly, what people are searching for online, and even how much similar items are selling for on reselling platforms. This helps them stay competitive and ensure they're not undervaluing their inventory. So, the next time you're browsing the racks and wondering how they came up with those prices, remember that there's a lot of thought and strategy that goes into it. Thrift stores are becoming more sophisticated in their pricing, which is all part of this evolution we've been talking about. But don't worry, we'll dive into another important piece of the puzzle in the next section. Donations. Without those generous donations, there wouldn't be anything to sell, right?
The type and quality of donations can impact thrift store prices too. Thrift stores are becoming more like boutiques. They're pickier about the donations they accept. They want items in good condition, on trend, and appealing to their customers. Stained sweatpants or outdated blouses might not make the cut.
It's not just about the condition, but also the quantity. Some thrift stores have seen a decrease in donations, leading to tighter supply and higher prices. It's a simple matter of supply and demand. By donating items in good condition, you're helping thrift stores thrive and keeping prices in check. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? We've talked about how popularity, reselling, the economy operating costs, gentrification, strategic pricing, and even donations all play a role in those rising thrift store prices. It's a lot to take in.
But here's the thing to remember. Thrift stores aren't just about scoring amazing deals. They're often a vital part of our communities. Many thrift stores are run by non-profit organizations that rely on those sales to fund important programs and services.
Think about it. Those slightly higher prices on those thrifted treasures might be helping to provide meals for the homeless support job training programs, or fund after-school activities for kids. When you shop at a thrift store, you're not just getting a great deal. You're often supporting a good cause.
So, yes, thrifting might be a little more expensive than it used to be, but it's still a more affordable and sustainable way to shop. And when you factor in the positive impact those purchases can have on our communities, it makes those slightly higher prices a little easier to swallow, right?
The next time you're browsing the aisles of your favorite thrift store, remember that you're not just shopping. You're participating in a circular economy, supporting sustainable practices, and potentially making a difference in the lives of others. And that, my friends, is something worth celebrating.